Hello, I'm Laura, the founder of Link Private Tutoring, and I'm here to give you what I call a last-minute ACT review. It's certainly not a full boot camp, which I do have available at https://linkprivatetutoring.thinkific.com courses/ACT-bootcamp. So let's get into it. What I have done here is found the key items in each section that are going to help you to earn the score that you need. If parents are watching this, this is a time to pause it, get your kids over here and learn what are some of the last minute key things that they need to know. So on the English section, you're going to read from the very beginning, including the title. You're not going to read the instructions because you've already practiced and you already know it. When you encounter an underlined numbered portion of the text or a square, that's where you go over to the side and you deal with that question. You should be able to answer most questions this way without having to read ahead. Sometimes you do need to read ahead a little bit. We're going to run through this really quickly because I am planning for you to stop the video, maybe take a picture of the screen. There's a lot of good information here. One key, semicolons. If you know how to use a semicolon, you're going to raise your ACT score by at least 1, if not 2 points. When you see a semicolon, ask yourself if you can replace it with a period. If you can, then you can use a semicolon. On the ACT English test, semicolons are equal to periods when you only have one semicolon. So look at an example of this. Grandpa's favorite feature on the remote is a sleep function. This option automatically turns the TV off after a present amount of time, which is very convenient when he falls asleep watching the show. Notice that J is a semicolon, and this time, this is an extra trick. You don't even have to ask yourself, could I put a period there really? Because notice you've got the option of a semicolon or a period. I told you that a semicolon equals a period. The ACT will not ask you to choose stylistically between the two, which means H and J are both out. And you are either going to have a comma or nothing. And in this case, you've got nothing, which is very convenient when he falls asleep. You don't want a comma there. 33% of the wrong answers on the ACT are due to misreading, not content knowledge issues. So you want to be very precise. Here's some rules that will raise your score immensely if you don't know it. No single commas before or after a preposition, between a subject and a verb, between a verb and the rest of the sentence, between an adjective and the noun it modifies, between two independent clauses. I went through it fast, but let's look at how all of those play out, or most of those play out in this example. The mayor visited the site of the new stadium. Well, we don't want a comma between the subject and the verb, so G is out. We don't want a comma between the verb and the rest of the sentence, so H is out. And we don't want a comma between or in front of or after a preposition. Of is a preposition. All the choices are out due to process of elimination. F is your answer. Learn when you should use a comma. So this was when you should not use a comma. This is when you should. After an introductory phrase, between a dependent clause and an independent clause, when the dependent clause comes first, after a participial or gerund phrase that begins a sentence, that would be the word would start with ing or ed, driving or exhausted, before a participial or gerund phrase that ends the sentence. So these examples here are for you to go back, look at, and learn and take notes. Wordiness. Wordiness, you can have 6 to 12 wordiness questions on a test. If you didn't know this, you are raising your score. Okay, but first you got to identify wordiness. Most, if not all of the options mean the same thing, but they use different words. There will be a repetition of something already stated in meaning. There will be significant, look at that, I did not put my close parentheses. Please imagine that it's there. There will be a significantly shorter answer. There's no verb ending issues. There's no punctuation issues. You choose the shortest grammatically correct answer. You must plug it back in. Don't just run through and choose the shortest answer, because if you look at number 4 here, J, kids see that as the shortest answer, but J and H are the same because they're both one word. So you read through that. So when he went to buy, went but to buy a new color television, owing to the knowledge that due to the understandable fact that because or so, they all mean the same thing. So you might try so and you realize it doesn't work. Because is the answer. So when he went to buy a new color television, because his old black and white model had finally quit, and the salesperson tried to talk him into buying a model with a remote control, he resisted. That's why you've got to read your answer choice in with the whole sentence. Here's another thing to look at. When two of the options are a comma and one of the ways to punctuate independent clauses and nothing else changes, one of those two is correct. So you've got this whole sentence, but in pinball, you have three factors to consider: you, the machine, and chance, which is sometimes your enemy, sometimes your ally. So a lot of times people are wanting to put a comma there, but look at the semicolon and look at the comma and. So the comma would be right, comma and without the comma after it would be a way to punctuate an independent clause. You want to say and, but you've got that extra little comma there, so be precise. You've got a semicolon and a comma. One of them is right, which is sometimes your enemy, comma, sometimes your ally. Semicolon won't work because you can't put a period there. So even if this is really confusing, you learn the words, you get it fast. All right, here is another little trick. When there are three transition words and the option to delete the transition word, always delete. So we're looking at here, however, my grandpa. You always want to read the whole sentence. But we see, however, additionally, conversely, or just grandpa. We've taken out a transition word. You always want to go with the one that's taken out. Grandpa could punch in the time and the channel of his favorite daily news program, and the TV would turn on that program at the proper time. That works. ACT, there's only one answer, so none of the other transition words can be right. On math, you want to know how many items you're likely to answer, so you've got to take a 60-question practice test, and you've got to see where you finish in 60 minutes. So 32 right is a 22 scale score. Depending on your goal, you don't need to rush to finish. So know that. So when you go into the test, you don't have any anxiety. So you want to choose AF or EK as your letter of the day, meaning if you don't get to a question, you already know what you're going to choose. AF and EK are right slightly more than your 20% of the time on the last 15 questions of the math. That's why that's what you want to choose. If you don't know it, determine if any options are clearly wrong, cross them out, choose between what's left, move on. Don't waste time on something you know you don't know. Also, don't assume what the question is asking. Do read the question carefully. When you have an answer, check that your answer actually answers the question, not what you thought the question was. An example, students are used to solving for X, but on the ACT, they may want you to solve for X squared minus 4. Would they have an answer just for what X is? Absolutely, and it would be a distractor. It would be wrong. These are guaranteed to show up. Be rock solid on these because they will show up most frequently and in many different ways. Fractions, averages, probability, percents, exponents, linear equations. These are only the top 6. So some people, most of my students have trouble with geometry. If you're taking the ACT as a junior and you had geometry freshman or sophomore year, it's been a while. There are just some basic things in geometry to know. Know the degrees of quadrilaterals, the exterior angles of a polygon, the degrees of triangles, area, volume, of all your main shapes, area of a triangle, area of a parallelogram, area of a circle, and then perimeter of all shapes, just add up the sides. Perimeter of a circle is called circumference. It's 2 pi r. A lot of students don't remember pi r squared versus 2 pi r, which is which. Take some time to study that. I'm not going to go over these rules, but you can pause the video. You need to know your angle rules. What's equivalent to what, depending on what's going on. Here is another rule. Learn all of these. Here is a practice. You can pause the video and see how these rules play out in the actual test. Pause the video, do this practice, and I'm about to give you the answers. There you go. Now look at number 7. If you chose, this is an example of answering the question that's asked, not the question that you think. You need to find DE before you can find the perimeter of DEF. But look, DE is 3, and a lot of people choose A because they answer the question they thought they were supposed to answer instead of reading carefully. Fractions, all the properties of fractions, as well as decimal equivalents, is key. Averages, know what your mean is, which is your average. Know median, mode, and range. Lots of questions have you figure out all of these and then say which one stays the same or something along those lines. Probability is difficult for some students. It shows up a lot. Know how to do probability. Study that. Just your basic probability, as well as combinations and permutations. Probability and combinations will be on the easier questions. Permutations will get to the more difficult questions. Percents, know how to figure out all your percents, turn the words into math. So for example, if you had the question, what is 16% of 1400? Change your 16% to its decimal, 0.16, then of means times. And then, so you're just multiplying 0.16 times 1400. Your answer is the answer to the original question. What is 16% of 1400? Word problems. Here is another practice that you can do. Break them down. Turn words into math and ask yourself, if you don't know where to start, ask yourself, what do I know? And start writing down, what do I know? I know that a hamburger plus a soft drink is 210. So pause it now, work on it. All right, I'm going to move to the next slide and give you the answer. See how you turn the words into math? 2H, 2 hamburgers, plus S, plus a soft drink equals 350. 1 hamburger, H plus S equals 210. The difference is the hamburger. We want to know what the soft drink is. And so you do 350 minus 280 is going to be your 70 soft drink. Reading. You want to read with a pacer. In kindergarten, your teacher told you don't use your finger. Well, guess what? Professional readers who do reading speed contests use their finger. There's a fancy word for it, pacer. Read every word quickly. Underline keywords quickly and transition words that show compare, contrast, and cause and effect. Mentally, you want to summarize the main idea of each paragraph. If you forget what you read, restate the question before trying to answer it. So you've got 40 questions and 35 minutes. That's 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage. Or if you do 3 passages at 11 minutes per passage, do letter of the day for the hardest passage, you still could get a 22. So you're going to read every word of each passage. You're going to pick the easiest passage by figuring out the vocabulary words and how difficult it is for the first 2 sentences. So you're going to preview by reading the first 2 sentences of each passage, then decide what's easiest, decide what's hardest, read quickly for author's purpose. On the first question, you want to underline keywords in the question, determine what type of question it is. You want to read your answer options first, then you want to go back and forth between the text and the answer options. You are not supposed to read it and remember what you read and just answer from memory. You are supposed to go back into the text all the time. Again, like math, choose your answer and then reread the question to make sure your answer actually answers the question. A lot of times just one word can make something wrong. I'm going to go through really quickly on the item types. You've got main idea item types that look like this, the main purpose of the passage. Definitely pause this video, take notes on what I've got here in these slides. Specific detail, this is all from the same passage. So you see there was one main idea question. This isn't even all of the specific detail questions. This is what you need to learn how to do. Go look for specific evidence in the text, eliminate what's not true, pay attention to words that make a distractor wrong. Inference is another question, and you are generally going to have the word infer or imply in that question. Do it the same way as specific detail, but the answer is not going to be as clearly. Author's narrator author or narrator's tone or purpose. They're not going to contradict the main idea. You're going to look for tone words. Like here, what's the author's attitude? Well, the author uses words like visionary, not threatening, inside, and added perspective. So obviously the author feels positively about it. H, warm appreciation, is the only option that is 100% positive. Words in context are not simple vocabulary. They want to know how the word adds meaning to the sentence. So look at this example. The word paradox mentioned in line 77 most directly refers to what the author sees as the conflicting ideas of. I would treat that as a specific detail question first and see what does the author think are the two conflicting ideas, and that alone might get your answer. And you may not even be going to line 77 for your answer. So don't be tripped up in thinking you're just going to that line when lines are mentioned. Longer term ways to improve your reading: read a little bit, read faster, summarize paragraph by paragraph. And for science, you have, again, 40 questions and 35 minutes. You want to do your passage 1 minute less than how many questions you have. So a 7-question passage should be done in 6 minutes. This information is for your practice, not worrying about it on the test. For all the sections of the test, you need to go into the test and knowing how much time you're already going to take because you have timed, practice. Just a little bit, just a few hours before the test is not going to do a very good job of letting you know that. So science, you want to take a real quick look at the passage, determine what type it is. You want to go directly to the questions. You don't want to read the passage first. Use questions as signposts, and it's going to direct you to the part of the question, part of the passage that contains the answer. You're going to use your finger again, actually point to the label in each question. So let me show you how you would break it down. In figure 2, you would stop there and you would go find figure 2. As wing area, stop, go find the wing area, find that label. Increases, see it increasing. Okay, it's on the x-axis, it's going from 0 to 100. You're seeing it increase. The hydrogen isotope, you go find the hydrogen isotope, probably going to be up on your y-axis. Go find that label and then match it all up like that. Go find the labels. Look into the text only if your labels are not in the figures. Read the answer options, go through them, look back at figure 2, check each option for true or false. You're going back and forth again. You're not expected to remember. You also want to find questions that help you think logically about larger concepts. They're usually at the end of the passage. Questions at the end of any given passage are harder. Remember to use prior knowledge and your own logical thinking to check your answer. There's a couple of science things, and again, I'm going to go through them very quickly. So know trends and direct and inverse relationships. Know what a hypothesis is, because in conflicting viewpoints, you're going to have conflicting hypotheses and conclusions. Understand experimental design. What is an independent variable? What is a dependent variable? This particular example doesn't have a control because they've got one group sleeping 2 hours per night and one group sleeping 10 hours per night. So how would you create a control? You should have a control group in every experiment. Definitely know the pH scale. What you need to know is that acid is 1 through 6, base is above 7. The way I remember it is A is for acid. A comes first in the alphabet. Acid comes first in the pH scale. Read balanced equations. They have questions about that, and my students typically have trouble with them. Know certain things about genetics. Photosynthesis, you need to know this equation, but the good news is you don't need to know the actual numbers and formulas. You just need to know that carbon dioxide is what plants breathe in. That's their food gas. Oxygen is our food gas. So the plants breathe in carbon dioxide. With water, sunlight, photosynthesis creates, with the chlorophyll, creates their glucose and oxygen. So plants take in carbon dioxide and they create glucose, which is their sugar, their food, and oxygen. All right, no taxonomic rank, but the good news is all you really need to know is that species is the last one. Conversions, you need to be able to do them by hand because no calculator is allowed on the science test. The only ones I have ever seen are kilo, milli, and centi. I've never seen hecto, deca. There might be a deci, but I haven't seen one. Few key definitions, go through, know everything about wavelength. My students have trouble with wavelength. Know that saccharide is a sugar. Know that mass is related to weight. Know Newton's laws. So these are just some definitions to know. As you see, these are general scientific terminology words. They're not like specific chemical names that you don't need to know. Now, there you go. Go earn the score that you deserve.